In part one with Catrin, we heard about her life growing up in rugby, the importance of the sports family throughout her career, and how, in her 40s, she found support and acceptance from that family when she came out as a trans woman. In part two, we hear about Catrin's journey with international gay rugby after coming out, and a home she has found with the Cardiff Lions, the IGR affiliated club in the Welsh capital, where she now coaches. We also discuss how Catrin would like to see young trans players welcomed into the sport these days. From that point, where did the Lions come in? How did you find out about them?
Right, so the Lions, obviously through Instagram, you find these. It's suddenly it sort of opened up my eyes. I first got involved with the Tasmanian Devils, which are an all-trans side.
Are they based in Cardiff as well? I'd not heard about them.
So they are almost like a barbarian side.
Okay.
So they're all linked with the IGR. Some of them are linked with the IGR, some of them are just trans people, mostly trans males. So they came together. I think there was two guys that ended up at a competition. They were with their separate IGR sides, and they suddenly realised, wouldn't it be cool to have an all-trans side? And from there, they put that together. I was quite proud to be part of that. I'm no longer with them now, but yeah, it was quite a big moment.
Did you get involved with them after coming out as trans to your friends? Or before?
At the time, my friends knew I was out, but the mainstream world didn't know I was out. So that was another place that I could go. I was part of the first boot camp up in Manchester.
Okay.
We took them then to a tournament called the Thebans up in Scotland. That was the first time we actually played rugby. We did another tournament in Newcastle last season, and I think there was a game in Brighton as well. So my time coaching with them, we had some big moments. I was certainly part of the first time we ever put an all-trans side into a competitive environment. So
nice.
Yes, so we part of history books, I suppose.
Yeah.
Whether the history books will have our names in the things that in years to come.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
But yeah, it was quite a proud moment to be part of them, and I love everything that the Devils all stand for. It's quite unique. But from them, there's a trans guy there's two trans guys from the Lions that got involved with the Devils, introduced me to the Lions, and that's where I said, well, hang on, I've got this IGR side that's on my doorstep, and I've started being basically a supporter, and from my role with the Devils, sort of looking out for the trans players within that side, really, and realised there's an outlet for my coaching when I finished with Dowlais last season to move on and maybe develop more players within the IGR.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you were already coaching with Dowlais, and then
yeah. So I was still so I was part of the whole coaching team. Primarily, our role was with the second side. So the main coaches would take the first team away on the Saturday. We would have the players who are not quite making that side and take them to the second team leagues and fixtures and run that side. Training used to be just together, and so you'd be under the head coach of the main side, but doing whatever's needed. A lot of shouting, mainly.
Using the word you used there about mainstream world, Dallas being a mainstream club, I guess. Yeah. Were you coaching a men's side? Were you coaching a women's side?
Yeah, so it was the men's side we were coaching. So they like Division 1, but then obviously it's quite a strange world in Division 1. If your club is Division 1, then so are your seconds, even though your seconds might not quite be up to that standard. You're very much bracketed. There's no differential. It's where your first club is, and that's your standard of all your players that are registered under that club then. So, yeah.
When you were coaching that men's side, were you able to be trans as you were coaching? Were you able to dress as the woman you want to dress as?
No. So, I mean, I was coaching with them before I came out, and it was through them then that I came out. So I suppose towards the end of that season, my nails were always done. There was elements changing, but I was very much in the transition period then. And I don't think it was purely because of I was there at that game. It was just that was the way I was coming out to the world and sort of easing myself into it, I suppose, and before being what I am in front of you today, you know. So yeah.
I noticed your nails actually as we started talking. I thought they're looking fantastic today. Perfectly twinned with your outfit. Okay, so you then moved to coach with the Lions. What's your involvement been with them in terms of the teams that you've coached?
So I've taken on board as a development coach. So you got your head coach there, you got a couple of the other coaches been there, but primarily they brought me on so that the people who were new to rugby, so when they're doing the more technical stuff, I'm able to take a smaller group to one side and concentrate on the key skills. And it's an area of rugby that's quite forgotten about, and you forget about it because you're so used to coaching within the grassroots sides then that these boys have been playing since they were young. The actual basics of the game, you forget, you take for granted they know them. So it's quite a unique experience for me to go with an adult sort of side and teach them from the start, really. It's different to doing it with kids because they want to listen, they want to learn. You get the results a lot quicker. And it was a new part of coaching which should always be there, really, but it's a bit that's forgotten about, and it's quite rewarding.
How many training sessions are you involved with a week and matches?
Well, I go to everyone. Well, aside from work, if I'm working, I obviously can't get there, but I try to get to 2 a week, and I certainly get to at least one a week.
For someone listening to this pod, I mean, the Cardiff Lions are a lot bigger than this podcast is, but if there was someone listening to this who'd not heard of the Lions but was in the South Wales area and wanted to get involved, what's kind of on offer at the club in terms of the number of teams?
It's involvement, I think, is the biggest thing. You've got something to be part of. We're all inclusive. We welcome everybody from all walks of life. It doesn't matter what your thing is. It doesn't matter. You got the sporting aspect, which keeps your body, mind healthy. I like to think it keeps your body, mind healthy. You got that sort of sportsmanship, the team bonding. And there's a thing that it's not like going to a grassroots side where you got the pressures of leagues and getting into the side and what have you. It's really about the development. There's not your regular week in, week out game. So the games are more spaced out, so that you do a lot more work in preparing for them games. It's quite a unique experience. But
so is there a side that's in a league at the moment, or is it more a case of arranging fixtures with other clubs?
So yes, within a league, within an IGR league, there's not many sides there, and you tend to have to travel. So the closest one being Bristol. We got there's a side down in Plymouth, West Country. So an away trip is an away trip. It's a bit of a travelling journey. But the league is obviously not that big either because it's all IGR sides with similar setups. So they all tend to be within the city. We do go to the end of the tournaments. So IGR sides hold tournaments. The Thebans I spoke about is the one that's up in Edinburgh, which is quite unique. You actually play on the fields. It's just outside Murrayfield, so all your picture opportunities are with the Murrayfield Stadium in the background. It's a very development orientated tournament as well, that one. So you run a training day on the first day. I always get part of the coaching there, so you're coaching somewhere like 300 people in one day, which is quite a unique experience as a coach. It's run very well. It's all focused on development. People new to the sport, they get the chance then to obviously play competitively the day after and do a lot of drinking, I suppose, and celebrating afterwards. So it has all rugby elements merged into one.
And I think kind of a key thing that some people that are involved with teams where they assume that everybody on the team is straight and cisgender is that the drinking aspect and the social is something they do and that wouldn't necessarily be as popular in IGR, but actually that's completely not the case at all.
I would say it's slightly worse.
I think perhaps because of the fact that for so many people within the LGBTQIA plus community, a club and a gay bar was an environment where they felt safe and they could go to be with other people who had shared experiences. And so for a lot of us, it is when you're having a drink, when you're having a dance, that you kind of get to be yourself and meet other people like you.
It's when you drop your guard a little bit. Alcohol does let you lower your guard and that allows you to be yourself. And that's what you get with the Lions. You get that. You're all on common ground, so you have somebody we run events, we run socials, so there's something to aim for. You can get it right. You feel a bit alone, maybe, and you can get out with like-minded people. There's no pressure on you. You get out and enjoy yourself. Get the clubs. It's very supportive, inclusive, and it's probably the best thing I've ever been part of. Really.
Nice,
Yeah.
that's great to hear. For someone who, whether they're a trans woman or a trans man, or whether they're gender fluid, and they wanted to be involved with Cardiff Lions, how would they go about getting in touch, getting involved? What opportunities would there be for them at the club?
So the opportunities are there for anyone. So it's just get in touch with the Lions through the socials, find out when the next training sessions are and what have you. We normally train Tuesdays and Thursdays. We actually got the last training session tonight before Christmas, and then we headed back up in January. But yeah, it's Instagram, Facebook. We were on all the socials. You wouldn't go to search Cardiff Lions to find it. There'll be a messaging centre. Steve, who I know you know, he does a grand job at the social media.
Yeah, very responsive.
He'll certainly get back to you and let you know when the next event is happening. And yeah, there'll always be a welcome there for any new people. We'll get to know them and introduce you slowly or as quickly as you want to get introduced to that aspect. And yeah. And
trans players are able to play in the main side?
Yeah, so it's a very complicated subject then, trans. So trans, what people don't realise, when they banned trans females like myself competing in the female sport, they also excluded the trans male aspect of things. When they were on testosterone and things, they can't compete within the female sport.
Yeah.
But then they start to, and the physical presence then in a lot of trans males is a lot slighter and smaller than your cis male, but they are then restricted to either playing within the male sport or not playing at all. I don't agree with everything that's there, and we've got a lot of work to do with the unions and what have you to get inclusivity within the sport. But at the Lions, we're there for everyone, and we will work around all these barriers and boundaries that are set by people who know nothing about trans at all. And we will get around them. It's a big fight to do. I think it's a case by case for trans females. For me personally, I would never want to compete in the female sport because I've played that higher element within the male sport. It just simply wouldn't be fair for me to go into it. But then you have young trans females who are a lot more confident than I was, who are coming out early. They change their body makeup quite early on. Their stature is not the same as what has been developed. And I think they should be allowed to compete within the female sport because they haven't had that experience to the male game. There's a lot of work to go. There's not a one book sort of ticks all. There's a lot going on with that. Whether it gets resolved in my lifetime, I don't know. There's a lot of dinosaurs at the top of the unions to sort of convince. And
there are, and a lot of panic, I think, of people, as you say, don't really know what they're talking about, haven't done any research or taken the time to listen to people, making decisions on the basis of very little that end up being exclusionary to so many people. Do you think it's a process where you're going to be able to take a role as a representative? Have you had conversations with clubs outside of IGR?
I'm still quite new to being out, I suppose, but I'd like to think that I could be a voice. I certainly know the ins and outs of the grassroots game from my experience within that. And I certainly know the aspects of being trans and the restrictions on you and the protocols around that. I'd like to think I'm in a good position to be able to argue both sides and come up with fair solutions, I suppose. So I'd welcome any talks with me and sort of guide the unions in the way to go about it. Whether they want to take that up or not, I don't know. But I'd like to think that I can make a positive difference in how trans people are included in sport, certainly within the rugby world. I suppose it'd be like a blueprint. If we could get it right in rugby, it'd just be a blueprint that could follow through all sports. Because it's the same issues, no matter whether it be in netball or football. The blueprints are the same in inclusivity.
And I think you've hit on a really key point there. Sports are generally very bad at working across different sports and learning from one another. You look at something as kind of actually basic as VAR in football, but they make it out like it's the most complicated thing in the world. But video referral has been used in rugby, cricket, tennis, American football, ice hockey for years. Sports don't learn from one another, but in terms of including trans athletes, that is an area where a sport, if different unions, different governing bodies spoke to one another and learnt from different examples, that actually, hopefully, we could get to a point where there was inclusion a lot quicker than it feels like we're maybe tracking to at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I made a point really where when you're on the field, gender has no relevance. When there's a player coming down your channel, you have two options up for you. You have no time to think about what gender you are and what gender they are coming down your channel. You've got a split-second decision. Am I going to tackle correctly or not? It's that's your choices at that point. So I think sport is very genderless. Gender doesn't really come into it. They brought in from the bodies that run them, really, and the exclusions surrounding how they integrate female-male sport. It's not one box ticks all, and I think everybody should be able to compete at sport at a level they can compete at, because nobody likes failing at sport, and nobody likes hammering people at sport. You don't get anything from that. I think you have to have that competitive edge, and people need to be on the same level as you. So it don't matter what that sport is, you need to find that common ground with the people you're playing with and playing against to be on that same level. And I think that's where we need to start bringing boundaries down a little and working a better way of including everybody within the sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we said that you wouldn't change anything in terms of your own journey because it's made you who you are. But if you were to imagine now for someone who they're just getting involved in rugby, 9, 10, 11, as you were at the start, and they're trans, what to you would be a kind of a good supportive journey for them to be able to go on in rugby?
I think it'd be nice to have, I don't know, some sort of confidential way of being able to speak to somebody involved within the unions or the governing body of that sport, whether it be rugby, football, or whatever. I mean, we all have these governing bodies. We actually have, within the WRU, we have an inclusive officer, but I don't think many people within the grassroots game know that position or person even exists.
Yeah, and quite often it's tagged on to something else that they're doing as well.
It's sort of there, and they've got busy jobs. There's obviously a lot of sort of stats and things that are put on them as well. I mean, when I talk about inclusivity, I know their job is surrounded around disability and things like that as well. Like Darren within the WRU, I think does a fantastic job. I think it's too much for one person. There's a lot of work to go, but I think that the unions do need to look at not so much a counselling, but an outlet to be able to talk and say, this is going on in my life, and how's the sport going to sort of support me and have a more defined path in supporting these individuals. There's no coincidence that sort of mental health gets involved, and people who are struggling with their identities, they struggle with mental health, and it makes you think when you hear of some of the worst case scenarios of mental health of, was that person struggling with their identity, or what was going on with that person? Like, could we have done more as a governing body to sort of look after them, and would that not have happened if they were supported in the correct ways? So, I think it's sport we've got a long way to go. I'd welcome getting involved with any sort of conversations with unions and what have you, because I'm a firm believer of supporting everybody within our sport.
What would be a piece of advice that you would say you've learned from your journey that you would give to a young trans rugby player?
Just be yourself. I hid away from who I was and done everything I could to not be that person. And certainly since I've come out, I'm living life now. Living, loving. Yeah, it's be yourself, and it's not easy doing it, but certainly once you've done it, it's a lot better on the other side. You hear too often the negative stories of people coming out and losing everything, and there is positive stories out there as well. I hope that I make a difference with it. I hope that people sort of pick up on my story and think, actually, if that happened to somebody I knew, then I would be the same way as my friends have been with me. They'd be the same with their friends, So anybody could be trans, anybody could be gay. You don't know until that person admits to you what's going on. You don't know for sure what's going on in that person's life and who they are. And sometimes it's just putting a hand on it and saying, if you are, it's all right. Yeah.
I think that's really good advice, and I think your story is an amazing one, and a really, hopefully a really encouraging one to anyone that's at the start of the journey that you went on, or on their way along it, that it will all be all right in the end, and rugby as a family will be there to support you. Hopefully listening to your story will have helped some people, and they'll feel able to continue on their journey.
I hope so, yeah.
But thank you for joining us today.
Yeah,
really appreciate it, and it's great to hear your story.
It sort of covers quite a lot of aspects.
Mm-hmm.
When I come out and had such a positive experience, I want to do something positive, give back.
Yeah.
I've always been a firm believer of giving back. So the sport of rugby, certainly when I was self-employed, it gave me a lot, and I've always been a believer of what sport gives me, you give back. Hence, I'm so heavily involved with coaching. I want to give back. Yeah, so I'd like to use my opportunity for good, I suppose, and try and make a difference to other people's lives, and hopefully they won't have to live as long as I did, hiding who you are. And if I can give back in any way, I will. Yeah.
It was brilliant to have Catrin on the pod, and her story was such an inspiring one, full of love, understanding and support, something all trans sports people deserve. If you're based in Cardiff and looking for a welcoming LGBTQ+ inclusive rugby club, reach out to the Cardiff Lions on socials. We'll have more guests from the club in future episodes.